I've read 8 books about stolen brides, so let's review them. So, I don't know if you've seen my first book haul, and in it I hold 5 novellas, and it's part of the same series. So in this series called Stolen Bride of the Fae, there's 8 books, and I only have 5 physically, so the rest I read it on my Kindle, on my tablet. And I thought I would just review each book because I've read all of them. So the first one, which is also the worst rated one, it has like a 3.2 something on Goodreads, is Stolen Goblin Bride by Hamm. And all I have to say is the rating should be lower on Goodreads because this book was so bad. So in this book you follow Esther, and she's a human and she lives with her sister, and sometimes there's like a goblin market coming to their town, and that time she decides to befriend one of the goblin. But there's a lot of lore around goblin markets, especially that you can't accept gifts or you have to pay for them, or you can't pay for gifts, stuff like that. Most of the time people tell each other that do not trade with the goblin, because if you do a trade with a goblin, you don't really know the price they are asking. For example, oh, I would like this book that the goblin is selling, and actually the price will be the life of my firstborn child. So you don't really know the price of what you're asking of the goblin. So that's why most of the time humans say don't trade with the goblins. But Esther, since she's so stupid and dumb, is like, I know everybody in my life told me to never do that, but guess what? I'm gonna do it because I don't believe them. And then she befriends Lux, I don't know how you say it, Lux, who's a goblin. But at the beginning of the story, Lux is described like as a child, very childish, like a boy and not a man. So the first thing I have to say is the cover doesn't represent at all what is described in the story of how the goblin look and how Lux look, because it's a man, and in the book it's described as a child. So at first when you're reading the story you're like, is it between the two of them? And so yeah, get back to the story. I need to focus. So the story happens when Esther decides to buy something from the goblin, and the goblin is like, now you're my bride, and now I have to kidnap you. And the sister of Esther is like, no, we're gonna protect you, we're gonna find some way to break the curse, to break the deal. And at some point during the night, the goblin group comes to Esther's house, and they knock on her window, and Esther is like, yeah, I'm coming with you. Yeah, I'm going. So she's not even kidnapped, she's not even stolen, she's that stupid, and she's like, you know what? Let's go. And she doesn't even know. And she doesn't even know why they're taking her, where they're taking her, for what reason. Because yeah, Lux is saying, oh yeah, you're gonna be a bride, but it's just glossed over, and she's not like, what? A bride? No, he's just saying, oh yeah, you're gonna be a bride, and she's like, okay, let's go. And so they go to the goblin world, and there not a lot happens, and when they arrive at the goblin kingdom, I'm gonna say, you then learn that the romance is supposed to be between Esther and Lux, and you're like, ah, okay. So to describe the characters, she's very stupid, she's very childish, she is everything you could hate in a heroine, and he is just a carpet, a used carpet. He doesn't have any personality. So yeah, thankfully the novella was pretty short. I think it's like a bit more than 100 pages. Yeah, 130. And also I didn't really like the way that the sister was characterized. So Esther and her sister didn't have their parents anymore, and so the sister had to do a lot of sacrifices and had to take care of the house and of Esther. And then during the whole story, Esther is just bitching about the sister, when we didn't even learn that she was mean or just didn't do anything bad, but Esther was just mean to her for no reason. And also another thing I have to say is there's a lot I think 2 or 3 times in the story, they talk about the fact that Esther is dirty and she never washes, and then they kiss, and I'm like, to me, I don't know, it's quite out there, like a thought, but hygiene is important, especially in a romance, because I don't want to be in a romance with somebody who smells, and that's what was implied in this story. And at the end, for her to stay in the Goblin Kingdom, she had to change, and that's why, I don't care if I spoil it for you, you don't need to read this story, and that's why in the cover you see a tail, but she just changes to be physically attractive to Lux. And I'm like, oh, so you're stupid, you're dumb? Two different things. And and then you decide to change for a man. Okay. So, would I recommend it? Absolutely not. You don't need to read this one. And I'm gonna put on the screen between each book where I would put them compared to each other. So this one, since it's the first one, is gonna be at the first place, but it's also gonna be at the last place. And don't worry, it will be in the last place until the end of the video. The second book is Stolen Mage Bride by Sylvia Mercedes. So in this one you follow a king, a fake king, and a mage, like it says on the title. And the mage name is Desira. So at the beginning of the book, you see them on the battlefield. They are enemies, mortal enemies, and to stop the battle they need to do like a duel between the two of them. But when the king, I don't really know how to say his name, Lodiral, but there's like not an apostrophe, but yeah, you can say. But when he arrives on the battlefield, he falls from his horse, because when he sees Desira, he's like, oh shit, she's my mate. And you're like, oh. And he loses the battle, he loses the duel, so he has to move his troops, he has to go back to his country and leave the humans alone. But when he's on the ship to go back to his country, he just becomes ill, and he becomes sicker and sicker the more he moves from the human world, because now that they are mates and the bond was made because they saw each other, they can be apart from each other. So then he decides to go back to the human world alone and just steal Desira. And then the story is about them trying to break the mated bond. They have to do like, I don't remember if it's 5 or 7 trials to kind of break the bond, but at the end they decide not to. What I really liked in the story is that Desira had like flower companions, like you can see in her hair. She had like flower companions, and they have to be also mated, and if one of them dies the other becomes very sick also, and it was quite cute. The thing I didn't really like is it's not even miscommunication, but like hidden agenda, I'm gonna say. Like in the king knows that when they break the bond, one of them dies, and he decides that, oh yeah, she's the one who's gonna die. And then she learns of it, and she's quite disappointed and hurt. But then they love each other, and they're like, So it's not really my kind of trope when you like deceive somebody. But would I recommend this one? Yeah, maybe. Will I read a full novel of this story? No, because it's not my kind of trope, but I couldn't understand why people would be interested in this story. So this one on the board is gonna be the first one. So the second one is gonna be the first one, and the first one is gonna be the second one. The third book is Stolen Midsummer Bride by Grayce. So in this one you follow Mage, who's a human, and she's a farmer. They lost their parents, and she has, I think, 2 sisters and 1 brother. And there's a guy in town who wants to use her as a sex slave. Oh yeah, I forgot to say that in every book there's just closed door, there's no sex scenes. So if you want books with not a lot of sex or sexual connotation, you can read this series. So yeah, the guy in town wants to use her as a sex slave, and of course she doesn't want to, because she has to pay debt. But she also knows that if you go to a certain part of the wood, you could be taken by the Fae, and because in the Fae world, stealing a bride is like a status symbol, and people really encourage to steal bride. So yeah, Meg decides to offer herself to any Fae who could come by and settle the debt she has with the bad guy in her town and help her family and brothers and sisters. So yeah, she's in a clearing, and Basil, who's the other main character, decides to steal her, but she's not really disappointed, but she was expecting like a noble and is a librarian, so it's not the same social class. What I really liked in this story was the house, which is kind of weird to say that, but the house, it was not sentient, because in the book they say it's not a sentient house, but you could open a door and it could lead you anywhere you needed to go, even if you don't really want it to. So for example, when Basil steals Meg, she's dirty, because I think in the human world or in her world they bathe like once a week, and when he has her on his horse, it's like, oh, she smells really bad. I don't know why authors like to talk about smells like that. But so when she arrives at the house, Meg just wants to go to sleep, but she opens the door and it's like a grotto, but with like hot springs, and she's like, no, I don't want to bathe, I just want to sleep. So she closed the door, she opens it again, and she's like, oh, I'm just gonna have to go wash. So yeah, I really like the house, and I also really like the description that the author made about the world, and I think it was like my favorite type of descriptions in all the different books. I felt like I was really in the Fae world. There's also a kind of darkness in this Fae world, because there's the Fae realm and also the monster realm, but the veil between the two realms is very thin and it's kind of breaking. So a lot of monsters come in the Fae world, and they attack knowledge. And since Basil is like a librarian, he has a lot of knowledge and he has to like guard the library, because a lot of monsters just come and destroy the books. And Meg is also helping him defeat the monsters. The only negative thing I have to say about this book is that they fall in love in 4 days. I know it's novellas, and I know that everything happens quite quickly, but in 4 days, come on. But yeah, I also enjoyed this one on the board. I'm gonna put the second and the third book at the same place, so they are both at the first place at the moment. So yeah. Would I recommend this one? Yeah. Will I read a full novel of this story? I don't know, because I think this one was like one of the bigger one. It's like 190 pages, so yeah, I don't feel need to learn a lot more about their love or the story. The first book, I don't have it physically, but it's Stolen Shadow Bride by S.M. Gaither, and to be honest, it was my favorite in all of the 8 books. It was nothing groundbreaking in the story, but I really liked the setting, I really liked the characters, and I really liked the story, which was quite simple, but I really enjoyed it. So in this one you follow Sylvia, who's a shadow princess, and she has a twin sister who's like the sun princess, and every generation the human kingdom has to give one of the twins to one of the other kingdoms. So in the middle you have the human world, and then you have the sun kingdom, and then you have the shadow kingdom. So one generation, the bride with the sun power is gonna be in the sun kingdom, and the next generation, the bride with the shadow power is gonna be in the shadow kingdom, to just like the peace treaty. But this time, Sylvia, who is the shadow princess, wants to protect her sister, who's quite sick and quite afraid of the world, and this generation, the sun bride, should go to the sun kingdom. But she decides, no, I'm gonna take my sister's place. She takes like a potion to take her sister's appearance, because they're not identical twins. So she takes a potion to appear like her sister, and she goes to the Sun Kingdom. But the problem is, sometimes to help her, Taron, which is the prince, I forgot to say the name of the prince. Taron, which is the prince, wants to help her, wants to comfort her, but it just burns because she used to shadow magic, she doesn't have any sun magic, and he's like, oh, I don't know why it hurts, because it's sun magic, you should be used to it. And the story is around the fact that Sylvia's sister is sick with like a sort of grey sickness, like her hand turned grey, she turns grey. And the king, which is Taron's brother, has also the same sickness. So she feels like there's something connected, but with her type of magic. But she knows that she's not the cause of this illness. So she tries to find the cure. Even when I talk about it, we feel like it's high stake, but it's not. It's very low stake story, and I really like the domestic life of the story. It was just their day going around, and to me I love fantasy set in just castles. You don't need to go on quests, you don't need to go anywhere, you could just stay in a castle, and I love castle settings in fantasy. So that's why it was my favorite story. And I also really like the characters. I felt like it was quite also a character driven story, and yeah, you could really see the bond that Taron and Sylvia had, even if at some point Taron learned about Sylvia's deception, because she needed to take, like, I think it's once a week, she needed to take the potion to keep looking like her sister, but at some point she doesn't, and he learns who she is, and he learns that she has shadow magic, and even at some point the king is like, oh, is she the one making me sick? And Taron is like, no, I know her, I need to trust her, there's a reason why she did this, and I really enjoy that. And I feel like it's not all the time that you see two characters in fantasy settings, especially if it's a guy and a girl, who trust each other and they trust their plans. And no, he decided to trust her, and I really like that. So yeah, that's my favorite. So now for the ranking, it's 4, 2, 3, 1. I also forgot to say, in this one, which I also really liked, they didn't say I love you. They didn't say I love you after a week, and I love that. For the 5th book, we're talking about Stolen Ice Bride by Angela J. Ford. So in this one, we're following an apothecary, which is who's called Sylvia, and a fae, which is Aiden. And I don't know if it's every year, but mages come to the town and decide to take somebody for their bride. Surprise, surprise! But Aiden has something against the mages, and so Sylvia is chosen as the stolen bride, and he decides, no, I'm gonna steal her. She's gonna be not very my bride, but she's not gonna belong to them, she's gonna belong to me. And in this one I feel like not a lot happened, because they're just going from the human realm to his palace, which is like the ice palace, hence the name. And they meet like creatures, they find the mages on their way, they have to combat them, and yeah, not a lot happened in this one. I just reread my note, and yeah, she had like, Sylvia had like a monster in her, and she turned like, she had wings, but to her what the cure was garlic. And I was like, what? The cure to the monster inside her was just to drink a potion with garlic in it, and I'm like, okay. When I read that, it took me out of the story a little bit, because I was not expecting this easy of a cure, because she was very protective of the cure. She's like, no, I don't need to lose it, I don't want to lose it, and at some point she loses the cure to keep the monster at bay, and the solution is garlic, and I'm like, okay. So yeah, in this one I didn't feel like there was a lot of character development, so to me the romance was not that believable, but it was still an enjoyable book. But in my rating, it's gonna be 4, 2, 3, 5, 1. And then for the 6th book, we're talking about Stolen Threadwitch Bride by Clare. So I have to say something. This one was originally published as a novella, but the author decided to stop publishing the novella and to do a full novel of the story. And so when I said that the series was no sex, in this one you have sex, but there wasn't any sex in the novellas. In the original novella. And to be honest, it kind of pissed me off that it was... So now you have a series of 7 novellas and 1 full-length novel, and you're like, couldn't you just write another story with other characters? I don't know, it pissed me off, I don't know. But yeah, in this one you have sex. You can easily skip it. I did find the original novellas, but I decided to read the full-length novel because it's the one that the author published and wanted to promote. So yeah, I read that one. And so in this one you follow Ariadne, who's a Threadwitch, meaning that when she sews, she can put intention in the garment that she's making, and she can boost confidence, she can make people not disappear but like a mirage. She can do a lot of things with her magic and whilst sewing. And Lysander is the Fae, and he has to do like a tithe where the queen asks him to steal a bride somewhere. And a lot of women and girls volunteered to be his bride, but when he saw the dress that one of the girls was wearing, he asked her who made the dress, and it was Ariadne, and so he decided to steal her. So for a long time you don't know his name, that's the first thing. The second thing, you don't really know why he stole her when there was a lot of volunteers who wanted to be taken. And it's only when they arrive at the palace, because yeah, they have to go from the human world to the Fae world. It's only when we arrive at Lysander's palace that we learn of why he stole her particularly. And it's because he needs a suit, but not any type of suit. He needs a magical suit to steal a seed of a tree from his backyard. I'm gonna explain. So basically, in the Fae world, the powers you have is given by a tree in each court. And when the tree is dying, a new seed is coming up on the tree, and you replant it, and you have new powers. Like you have the same power, but it's like regenerate. But the thing is, Lysander's neighbor decided to steal the seed, so Lysander and his court is losing a lot of power, and they don't know if it's gonna be extinct or if he can find the seed again. So that's why he asked Ariadne for a suit, so he wants to steal the seed back. But to be honest, there was a lot of time planning the heist and planning how the suit was made, and the end was quite rushed, and you learn that the suit didn't do anything. And you're like, okay. And I felt also, even if the book was like more than 400 pages, I felt like the ending was very rushed. And the epilogue, oh my god, so cheesy. So cheesy. Like, I hate cheese. I love cheese. I hate cheesy monologue, I hate cheesy dialogues, I hate cheesy declaration. And the epilogue was just like, my king, my man, my knight, my son, and I'm like, no thank you. So for my ranking, even if I seem like a bit negative about the book, it was not the worst one. So in my ranking, it's still 4, 2, 3, and we had a 6 on the same line, and then 5 and 1. So yeah. So for the second to last book, we're talking about Stolen Thorn Bride, which is the highest rated of all the novellas and books in the series. So in this one you follow Cassia, and she also has lost her parents, or she lost her mother, and her father is a deadbeat father, so he's never home. And she's like an apprentice to the mage of the village, which is quite frowned upon because they don't like magic in this human world. And there's kind of like a legend in this world of there's a hedge in the forest, and if you cross the hedge, you're coming to the Fae kingdom, and you're stuck there, you will never be able to come back to the human world. And at some point, the mage that Cassia is apprenticed to, she has pigs, and the pigs decides to go in the forest, and one of the pig goes inside the hedge, and I don't know why Cassia is like, I'm gonna take the pig from the Fae world back to the human world, but of course it doesn't happen like that. And that's why you meet the clan. The clan is the former brother-in-law of the king. So the king had a sister, and the clan was in love with his sister, but she died during a battle. And since then, the clan suffered a lot with depression and PTSD and just guilt. And to be honest, at the beginning of the book, he's dying, and he is quite glad that he's dying. But then the king and the healers heal him, and at first he's like, "Why am I still alive?" But then he starts to get to know Cassia, and they start to fall in love. I felt like the story was quite heartwarming. Even when I'm talking about it, like depression and PTSD, it's still a heartwarming story, and I felt like Declan was quite thoughtful and charming as the main character. I think he was my favorite male character of the story, because he also knew that Cassia didn't go willingly to the Fey world, and he also knew that she was kind of trapped, and she was also used to heal him. They had to have like a bond for him to take like her energy, and the Fae didn't want to sacrifice another Fae, so that's why they took a human. So yeah, it was quite thoughtful, and he knew that she didn't really have a choice, and he also didn't really have a choice in the surviving. So that created a bond and between the two. For the ranking with this story, it's gonna be 4, 7, so this one, 2, 3, 6, and 1. And now we only have one novella left, which is Stolen Mayfly Bride by Sarah K.L. Wilson. You know what? To me, this one had a competition. They were like, who's gonna be the worst of the two? So in this one you follow Vidar. You're mainly in his perspective, so he's the guy, it's Vidar. And the woman is Elkanah, and Elkanah was kind of gifted to be... She was sacrificed, not gifted. She was sacrificed to be the Mayfly, which means like once a year, just for 24 hours, she comes back to the earth, and the rest of the year she's just floating around. She doesn't have a body, she doesn't have anything to say, she doesn't have anything the rest of the year. But once a year she has like a physical form, and she's in a cage on an island, and she can grant, not wishes, but she can answer questions, so she can see a bit in the future, and she can find solutions to people coming to her. But yeah, she didn't really have a choice in being the Mayfly. And the story takes place in 40 years easily, because Vidar comes to see her like at the beginning, just once. And she can't talk, because if she talks, flies come out of her mouth, flies everywhere. So they don't really have a conversation. They just can communicate when she has like visions or stuff like that. That's the only way they can communicate, but just once a year. So Vidar comes to her to find a solution. I don't remember why, but I don't really care. Because I didn't like Vidar. To me, is even in my notes I wrote first chapter, hate Vidar, very creepy, very self-centered. And the thing is, that didn't change for the rest of the story. People told him that he was brave, that he was compassionate, but it was just talking about himself and just wah, 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 like a crybaby. That's Vidar for you. The way it was written, I didn't feel anything nice for him. I didn't have any empathy for him, so that's why I'm reacting like this. I also forgot to say that in this book, the main character, Esther, people told her, oh, you're so brave, you're so kind, and I'm like, where? And it's the same. That's why they were both in the competition between each other for who's gonna be the worst one. This one won. This one is still the worst one, but yeah. This one is second to last place, because I didn't feel frustrated reading the book. I didn't feel any hate or just resentment towards characters in this book, so that's why it's not the last book in my ranking. But I also didn't really like the fact that they didn't communicate, so I think they saw each other 4 times in maybe 40 years, and at some point we learned that they saw each other in dreams, but it wasn't really explained, or like why, or like how, and is it really a dream, or are they really talking in a dream? And and I didn't like the fact that he kept gaining maturity but getting older, and she didn't, because like the rest of the year she's just floating around, so she ages quite slowly because she only lives once a year. But I didn't like the difference between the two of them, and yeah, and also she's not stolen. He didn't steal her, she just escaped, so there's not stolen bride. And I was quite surprised because this one has a high rating. So the highest rating was the last one, Stolen Thorn Bride, and this one is the second one. And I was quite surprised because to me it's one of the worst one. It didn't feel anything. I really hate the characters. The story could have been cool, but it wasn't, unfortunately. So yeah, that's why in my ranking now, the final ranking: 4, 7, 2, 3, 6, 5, 8, and 1. So yeah, that's my ranking of a whole series. Would I recommend the series as a whole? Maybe, but don't rush to read it. Like, there's a few stories that were quite nice to read, but I'm gonna say it's 50-50, so maybe if you read the synopsis, you can read the ones you feel like you're gonna like the most. But yeah, I still enjoyed doing this video and doing this project, but now I'm quite glad that it's over and that I filmed the video. And now I can stop talking also, so that's quite nice to me. But yeah, let me know if you've read the series, if you want to read it now that I've talked about it. But yeah, I'll see you in the next one. Bye!